All right, Anthropic just launched a new feature to Claude Code, which is going to be extremely useful for the people that always forget whatever that it is that they're working on. Now, me, for instance, I'm using about 8 different terminals whenever I'm working on Claude Code, switching in between all, and it's very useful for me for the new feature that they just released today to get a little bit of context about what is it that I'm working on, why did we take these decisions, and what can we basically gather from this, right? So the feature I'm talking about is basically / by the way, which is a useful way for you to now have sidechain conversations while Claude is working. Now, it's a very important thing to mention here, though, that there are a few caveats about this that are not as powerful as people are kind of making it out to be. So let's jump into an example on how you can use the by the way feature inside of your IDE or inside of your terminal. So let's say that I am doing now an SEO audit for the operator vault. That's the wrong one. Either way, and I just want to gather a little bit of context. Are we going to be using the actual data for SEO API, for example? So I'll do / by the way and ask, are we using the data for SEO API when we run this skill? And it's going to basically start now a side chain of thought inside of our conversation and get me that answer without polluting the main conversation that we're having here, which is the actual audit that it's running right now. And it's going to see, no, we didn't actually use data for SEO API in this audit run. So this tells me, okay, so now I can positively press space to snap back into our main basically conversation. And I can then press escape. And now I can add that thing into my actual window. Now, before we had the by the way feature, we'd have to press escape to start to interrupt our Claude session to basically ask it, hey, are we actually doing this thing? Or let's say we forgot something inside of our plan and it's like, well, I think we forgot this thing. Well, now we can just ask and make sure that we didn't forget that thing, or we can just ask more about our conversation. Now, however, there are a few things you need to think about, but first, let's talk about how you can use this feature right now inside Claude Code. So if you're using the traditional Claude way of using Claude Code, well, traditional, if you're installing it inside of your IDE, whether that's Anti-Gravity, Cursor, VS Code, or I forget the other one. Anyway, doesn't matter. You basically click on the Claude button and you'll have Claude open here. But for now, the by the way feature does not work inside of the traditional one. So what we want to do is we want to go to Terminal, click on New Terminal. And what we can do, we can now drag this conversation up into our window here. And now we can start Claude inside of dangerously skip for permissions, which is my favorite way of running Claude. You don't have to do this. You just, like, if you didn't know that you could, you can basically do this and you don't have to click the enter button every time you want to make a change. And now we have the by the way feature activated inside of our Claude Code. Now, it's important that we cover by the way a little bit more, because a lot of people are making this up like, God, this is the best thing Anthropic has launched since forever, since sliced bread. I'm like, yeah, not really though. For instance, the by the way does not have tool access, so it can only answer from what is already inside of the context, which is good. I mean, it's good for what it is. And the history is not added to the main conversation. This one really is nice in my opinion, because that means we have zero pollution in the actual main chat that we have. So if every time that you press escape and then you add something, that adds a little bit more context into the pollution, into the actual main thread, right? So, and why that's important to cover is that, well, it is proven already that the first tokens that LLMs use when they are answering you are the most effective, and output becomes less good, I guess I could say, over time, the more tokens and the more context that has been added, right? Another thing is that there's no follow-ups. This is a one question, one answer type ordeal. This means that whenever you get your question answered, you press spacebar or escape or enter, it snaps back to the main conversation. You cannot continue from there. And it works while Claude is processing or between turns, which is also good. And the cost is minimal. This is pretty cool as well. It reuses the parent conversation's prompt cache, meaning that, well, it's going to cost you very minimal amount of money or API tokens for you to actually ask that question, which before, when you would press escape and ask your question, you basically load up all the context that you had before in the conversation. If you didn't compact before that, but yeah. Now, there is one more thing that we should cover here is that, well, there is also the /fork feature, which, this one no other creator covered in their videos yet with by the way. So 1 point to me. Jeez, fuck, I'm such a nerd. So anyway, so there's two ways to ask questions without polluting your main context. You have different tools for different jobs, right? By the way, it's like a sticky note where you want to ask, you read it, and then you dismiss. You now can make a decision based on where you're at. The fork, however, is like making a second desk next to your main one, and where you have the full session and the full power to make your own thing. So for instance, right, let's say that I'm creating a video outline, which I definitely did not do for this video. And then I wanted to create a lead magnet or let's say an HTML file that basically outlines the things that I want to cover in the video. Cool, but I don't want that to take up context inside of my main chat with my script. So I do a /fort. And let's just go through kind of how that looks like. So let's say now that I'm inside of my SEO audit here. Now I have way too many windows open. I hope you're not getting confused. So let's say that I have my new window here and I want to do a /fork. So I want to basically go from this conversation into another one so I can basically have a new conversation from where I left off. So I can do fork. And now this conversation is now forked. So this is now my second desk. And if I want to continue my old conversation, I basically copy the original command here. I can open a new terminal and then I can run that and drag that into my whatever. And now we have my forked version where I can now create my lead magnets or my HTML variations or another SEO audit. And I have my main conversation where I left off basically. So that's a pretty cool way. So that's how you could use the by the way for questions, and then fork, you want to use that for whenever you want to create a second desk basically. You can see it as an isolated work tree. One thing to keep in mind, it will have higher token costs because you're loading the full new session with all of the previous context of your previous conversation. It takes more time, but I think that's already kind of taken like into account. What I would have wanted to see from Anthropic on this is actually I would have wanted to see where I could make a split decision inside of my Claude session without actually pressing escape. So this means that I would basically do like a new injection where I would add my instructions, because let's say I forgot that I wanted to use a specific API or I wanted to add something to my plan. Well, I don't want to have to press escape for that. And I think this is kind of what we wanted with the by the way feature, but it wasn't made. But anyway, that's cool. And now you know how to use the by the way feature and the fork feature. And you got to hear this from this non-technical guy. And I'm going to have people inside of my comment section being like, actually, dude, you actually can do this in a different way. It's like, I'm not the most big brain. But what I do know, however, is that I'm pretty darn good at openclaw. And I've been meandering. I've been looking around and I've been seeing that, well, in terms of like the school communities with actual openclaw stuff, there's like maybe one other openclaw community that actually has stuff that's actually good. If you want to join the school community, it's now at $29 per month. That price is going to go up as we add more stuff. I'd say my values is that I want to publish cool shit that actually works and makes you money. So if that is a value you can kind of vibe with, then feel free to join. Also, I just released 2 new modules in the AI Content Factory. I design all of my stuff alone as well, and I'm giving away all of my automations that I'm basically helping me create, track creators, do automations and whatnot. And yeah, so anyway, if you want to join the school community for Claude automations and also openclaw, and then kind of how they can work together to do handoff systems where openclaw is the 24/7 automation expert, well, that's good. They're basically scissoring. I'm not sure if I can say that even. So anyway, have a great one. Thank you for watching. I hope you use the by the way feature. Very nice.